Hey guys, tonight we step into a place of steamy silences and fragrant enchantments, where medieval nights soaked in warm water laced with mint and lavender, and maybe a little longing. You're standing now at the low-lit edge of a 13th century bathhouse, somewhere deep in the countryside of Aquitaine, or possibly in a half-forgotten corner of Wales, depending on which slightly drunk monk is telling the tale. The air is thick with rosemary and whetstone, and the flicker of firelight dances across the surface of the water like it's casting a spell of its own. You're here for something soft, soothing, and a little strange. And yes, tonight's story involves bathwater, handwritten love spells, and a knight who probably spends more time adjusting his hair than sharpening his sword. You probably won't survive this emotionally. But hey, at least you'll smell nice. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And don't forget to tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I always love seeing who's drifting off across the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step over the threshold and immediately feel it, the warm breath of the bathhouse itself. Not just heat, but intimacy. Steam curls in the corners like shy ghosts. Clay lanterns flicker on thick wooden beams, their wax catching in little copper saucers below. Somewhere behind a screen, someone hums quietly. The whole space smells like crushed herbs and lye soap and something sweet you can't quite name, perhaps honey water, or maybe lust disguised as floral perfume. In the corner, a tub sloshes. Not the dainty kind you picture nobles soaking in, all marble and marble-draped drama. No, this one is practical, wooden, large enough for 2 or 3 bodies, with knots in the planks that have learned centuries of secrets. And sitting in it is your knight. He's got the good cheekbones. The kind that make troubadours write sonnets just to cope. But he's not posing, or flexing, or even looking around. He's focused. One hand stirs the water with an old wooden spoon, and the other holds a folded parchment, yellowed with time, tied with what might be a strand of hair. Yes, hair. You watch as he unties the ribbon with exaggerated care, like the note might combust if rushed. He reads silently, lips twitching at something that might be a compliment, or a curse. Then, without hesitation, he dunks the whole thing into the bath. The parchment dissolves like sugar. The knight sighs, leans back, and lets his head tip against the tub's edge. Love spell, the attendant whispers beside you, appearing with such suddenness you nearly jump. He's been trying for weeks. Keeps switching herbs. Swears last time it turned his armpits blue. You blink. Is that normal? Oh, darling, she says, holding out a linen towel as if that explains everything. You've clearly never been in love during a waxing moon. This is not your typical tale of chivalry. Historians still argue whether bathhouse spells were actually effective, or whether they were more of a personal ritual, like spraying on your favorite perfume before a first date. But the recipe books from the period suggest a clear structure: warm water, fragrant herbs, something from the beloved, a ribbon, a nail paring, a strand of hair, and a whispered phrase that was never to be spoken above a hush. You inch closer to the tub as the knight reaches for a small linen pouch beside him. From it, he draws something thin and green. Basil? No, mugwort. Often associated with dreams and desire. This is no small gesture. Love letters in the bathhouse are risky. Parchment isn't cheap. Ink smudges. And more than once, a message has been intercepted by the wrong person. Historians still argue whether this custom was born from genuine ritual magic, or if it was simply the only way to flirt in a towel. But here, it feels serious. Not solemn. There's too much nudity and giggling for that, but sincere. The way someone might write their first love note in the margins of a Bible. The scribe walks the letter over himself this time, tucking it carefully in a little reed tray that floats like a barge. You wonder if this is standard procedure or if your knight paid the romantic delivery surcharge. The message is launched. The petals part. The tray glides through steam like it knows exactly where it's going. And just when the tray disappears behind the woven screen, the bathhouse door creaks open. A woman enters. And everything changes. She is not drenched in perfume, or draped in silks. No. Her gown is simple, though clean. Her hair is tied up, and her sleeves are rolled high, more like someone here to clean the floors than cause a scene. But the knight straightens instantly. That tells you everything you need to know. He knows her. And he's nervous. Which is odd, considering he was just humming in Breton and dropping talismans into his bathwater like a lovesick wizard. You watch her cross the tiled floor with soft, deliberate steps. The bathhouse falls quieter, as though all its warm-blooded inhabitants recognize something important is happening. Or perhaps they just want to eavesdrop on whatever scandal is about to unfold. She stops near his tub. Doesn't say a word. Just lifts her chin and gestures toward the water. He blinks. Then nods. Scoots over. The water sloshes. And she climbs in. No towels, no attendants, no theatrics. Just flesh meeting water. Ripples spreading out like rumors. They sit in silence for a few heartbeats. Then she speaks. You don't catch all of it, but there's something about the wrong flowers, and last time, it turned my elbows pink. He laughs. And suddenly, the whole room relaxes again. You hear someone exhale across the way. Probably a noblewoman who had bet her embroidery circle that this would end in dramatic rejection. The woman reaches into her own pouch and pulls out a sprig of thyme. Breaks it. Tosses it in. Time for fidelity, the attendant murmurs. Or for strong ankles. Depends who you ask. You lean your head back and close your eyes for a moment. Let the smells soak into your thoughts. There's a new scent now. Honeysuckle? No, marjoram. Traditionally used to bring comfort and calm. And occasionally as a mild aphrodisiac, though not the sort anyone wrote warnings about. It's the herb equivalent of a lingering glance, subtle, harmless, but oddly effective. You remember the knight's earlier ritual, the way he stirred the water, the way he kissed that little wooden token before releasing it. Was it meant for her all along? Did she know? Or did something about the scent tonight, this peculiar blend of rosemary, thyme, and warm breath, change her mind? Historians still argue whether medieval love spells were ever meant to work in the way we think of magic. Some scholars suggest they were simply structured daydreams, carefully crafted rituals that gave people permission to feel hope. Others claim the spells were more about psychology. Give someone a note that says I dreamt of you beneath the moon, and maybe they'll start dreaming it, too. You glance back at the couple. They're no longer talking. They're just sitting. Shoulders touching. Water rising slightly from the displacement of two bodies at peace. The scribe looks pleased with himself. The bathhouse returns to its quiet symphony of dripping wax, trickling water, and the occasional, accidental splash. Your knight doesn't look like a warrior anymore. Not like someone who's trained with broadswords or ridden into justs with a ribbon tied around his lance. He looks human. Tired, maybe? But content. You let your gaze drift across the tiles, your limbs heavier than before. The warmth, the scent, the weight of the air, it's all conspiring to lull you deeper into something between sleep and spellwork. And for a moment you wonder, if someone dropped your name into a bowl of marjoram and warm water, would you feel it? You stir slightly on the bench, limbs pleasantly lazy, eyes half closed. The scent of marjoram lingers in the air, mingled now with something darker, richer, clove, maybe? Or is that cinnamon bark someone's just tossed into their tub? The scent wraps itself around you like a velvet ribbon, tugging at memories you never actually lived. The couple still sits in that same tub, your knight and the woman who walked in like she belonged in every room he ever entered. They speak occasionally now, their voices low and grainy, words softened by steam and distance. You can't hear the conversation, but you can read the rhythm, gentle ripples punctuated by brief laughter and the occasional, suspiciously long silence that means nothing needs to be said. The scribe scratches on, pouring more fragrant ink across yet another piece of parchment. He hums as he works, a lilting little thing that might be a tune from the borderlands, or just something he made up after a few too many cups of bath wine. His latest commission, apparently, involves poetry about bathwater that sparkles like the tears of Saint Cecilia. A bit much, maybe, but it rhymes. You look away, not out of politeness, but because something across the room has caught your eye. A group of washerwomen has gathered near a stone drain in the corner. Not working, exactly, more like hovering. You shift subtly so you can hear them better. One leans in, balancing a basket on her hip, and whispers she's done it again. Third one this month. Who? The red-haired one? No, the one who always brings honey cakes. Honey cakes, the third repeats with a knowing nod. Every time. You wait. Surely this story has a climax. Well, apparently she drops a sprig of lemon balm into the tub, then breaks a honey cake in two and offers half to whichever nobleman's closest. And by sunset, she's riding in his coach. The group dissolves into a chorus of scandalized gasps and delighted chuckles. The first washerwoman makes a slicing motion near her temple and adds, "It's the cakes. I tell you, it's not the eyes or the perfume. It's the cakes. Men are easy." You smile, involuntarily. It's the kind of gossip that feels ageless. Perhaps even timeless. Historians still argue whether gifts of food were always tokens of affection or if they were sometimes just clever diversions. After all, what knight thinks rationally while nibbling on pastry? Another tub sloshes somewhere behind you. The tiled floor hums with motion. A different man, he looks like a minor lord or perhaps someone trying very hard to seem like one, has just poured an entire vial of pink-tinted oil into his bath. The surface erupts with bubbles. Rose oil, you think? Overpowering and expensive. It's the olfactory equivalent of shouting "I'm wealthy." Through your pores. You catch the glance he casts across the room, directed, very obviously, at a young lady seated alone with a towel wrapped strategically around her shoulders. She doesn't look up. Instead, she delicately peels a grape with her thumbnail. You wonder if that was planned. The rose oil man sighs and begins humming. Loudly. Something romantic. Possibly tragic. Something to do with dying of love. You suppress a grin. Meanwhile, the attendant, yes, the same one who trimmed the lantern wick earlier, sidles closer to you with a conspiratorial whisper. We call that tub over there the mirror pool. Know why? You shake your head. Because that's where people go to admire themselves, and convince others to admire them, too. She tilts her chin toward the pink oil peacock. He's our reigning champion this week. The mirror pool. Of course. It makes sense that even in a bathhouse designed for serenity, steam, and flirtation, someone would find a way to make it all about them. Humans are delightfully predictable that way. And yet, as the night drips onward, the attention shifts. Not to the loudest bather or the prettiest towel arrangement, but to the quiet rituals. The folded letter. The submerged ankle touch. The single plum blossom floating where none had been before. In one corner, a woman gently runs her finger along the edge of her companion's ear. It's not overt. It's barely even a caress. But it is incredibly intimate. You look away, not because it's indecent, it's not, but because some gestures deserve privacy, even in a room full of rose petals and gossip. The bathhouse air grows thicker, warmer, like the walls themselves have absorbed all the longing and now radiate it back in slow, sticky waves. You shift, stretching your legs out. The bench creaks softly beneath you. Somewhere near your elbow, someone's candle gutters, flickers, then catches again. A tiny moment. A breath of silence, then resumed murmur. One man, slightly older, has placed a bowl of heated stones in the center of his tub. The water shimmers gold around it, and he whispers to it like it's an oracle. As the heat rises, you smell sandalwood and something else. Juniper? A common protective herb. Historians still argue whether juniper was used more for warding off illness or attracting suitors, but either way, it smells comforting. Clean. Ancient. The scribe rises again. This time, he carries a long ribbon, embroidered with tiny words so delicate they seem to flutter as he walks. He passes it, reverently, to a girl with ink-stained fingers. She beams, and for the first time, you realize she's been watching him all evening, just as intently as he watched his own scrolls. She ties the ribbon into her braid without reading it. Perhaps she already knows what it says. And now it's your turn to wonder. What would your bathhouse spell contain? Would it mention almond oil and the scent of skin after soaking? Would it rhyme something ridiculous with laughter? Or would it simply say, "You looked at me once and I haven't quite recovered"? A single flame goes out. The attendant makes her rounds, checking tubs for petals, gathering forgotten soaps, collecting reed trays that carried so many messages through these small, sacred waters. Steam curls toward the ceiling. Somewhere, someone sighs into the velvet hush. And you think, there is a kind of magic here. Not the explosive kind with sparks or chants or lightning bolts. But something quieter. Slower. Magic that needs warm water, sweet herbs, and just enough bravery to pass a note across a pool. You rest your head back against the tile, and for a brief moment, you imagine yourself slipping beneath the surface, where words become muffled, where limbs float light, and where the sound of someone calling your name would feel more like a gentle vibration than a summons. Just drifting. But you don't submerge. Not yet. You're too interested in the story unraveling at the next pool over. There, a woman with a ribbon braid, yes, the same one from earlier, is preparing something quietly elaborate. You watch her movements with growing curiosity. First, she dips a small ceramic spoon into a vial of golden syrup. Mead, perhaps, or honey infused with rosemary. Then, she unrolls a slender piece of parchment and holds it just above the water. The steam curls the corners. Letters blur faintly. She begins to read in a voice so low you can't make out the words. But the air changes. Even the bathhouse scribe glances up from his scroll, as if something about the cadence pulls at him. The scribe, still wearing that knowing smirk, leans in subtly, then scratches something new across the page. When a poem is whispered to the water, it listens. Historians still argue whether these murmured rituals were genuine spells, private love prayers, or merely stylish theatrics. But here, now, in this room so thick with scented vapor and soft glances, the distinctions hardly matter. Whether magic is real or just beautifully imagined, it works its charm either way. You watch as she folds the parchment again, delicately, and slides it under a warm cloth on the edge of the pool. A keepsake for later. Or maybe a message to herself. Something about the way she does it makes you feel like you've witnessed something sacred. Meanwhile, the knight, yes, that knight, is back. Only now he's brought a new item, a pale leather pouch, tied with what appears to be a strand of silver thread. Curious, you lean in, not enough to seem nosy, but enough to get a better look. He unties the pouch slowly, reverently, as if he's done this before. Inside there's a mixture of dried herbs, some you recognize, lavender, thyme, others you don't. And then, a sliver of parchment, folded and sealed with wax. He holds it to the light and tilts it, as if catching the right angle will reveal its secrets. He doesn't break the seal, though. Just rests it gently on the bath's edge and begins humming a tune so soft, it barely exists. A lullaby, maybe? Or something even older. Across the room, the washerwomen pretend not to notice, but they exchange subtle glances. One of them mouths something that looks like second time this week. The implication is obvious. Some bath spells were used only once, burned, buried, or soaked away after a single moon. Others were, well, habitual. A repeating performance in the hope that one day, the spell might actually stick. You adjust your seat again, skin prickling slightly from the shift in air. The temperature has risen, just subtly, but enough to make every exhale feel like a whisper against damp skin. Suddenly, someone claps. Not loudly. Just once. The sound is polite, gentle, and oddly musical. A server arrives, carrying a silver tray filled with tiny cups of mulled wine, rose petal tea, and something dark and spiced that smells like roasted dates and cinnamon bark. One cup is passed to you without fanfare. You sip. It's warmer than expected and not quite sweet, flavored with cardamom and fennel. A curious choice. But it makes your toes curl with comfort. Next to you, someone chuckles softly and says, "It's an aphrodisiac, you know." You look over. The speaker is wrapped in a towel the color of ripe cherries, hair pinned with what looks like a fishbone comb. She raises an eyebrow. "The drink, I mean. They say it makes you dream in color. Deep color." You raise your cup and mock salute. "Good to know." She grins, then returns to her own tub, humming something just off-key. All around you, the bathhouse has settled into a sort of sacred rhythm. There's movement. People rise, recline. At the far end of the chamber, a stone basin bubbles with new herbs. The scent wafts lazily through the room: anise, mint, and something tangy, perhaps lemongrass. A new blend, perhaps. Or someone experimenting with a personal recipe. Bathhouse attendants carry bundles of fresh linens and whisper among themselves about the couple who accidentally left a rose-scented oil bottle in the dry room. Again. There's talk of a lover's quarrel, resolved, apparently, through shared plums and a second bath. Honestly, one attendant says they should just rent a tub. It's all very dramatic in the most deliciously petty way. Yet even amid the chatter, something deeper pulses here. Something ritualistic. You notice how, just before stepping into their baths, some people pause, close their eyes, breathe in, murmur something under their breath. Maybe a name. Maybe a wish. And then there's the girl sitting alone at the edge of the pool. Her fingers trace patterns in the water, over and over. Circles. Spirals. Letters, maybe. Her lips move, silently. And around her wrist is a bracelet made of braided hair, hers and someone else's, woven together with tiny bone beads. A charm, perhaps. A spell in disguise. You wonder who she's thinking of. Because every bath tonight feels like a love letter. Not the kind scratched out in a hurry with ink-stained hands and panicked urgency, but the kind written in secret, soaked into the steam, folded into rosewater cloths, hidden under soap trays, or whispered into candle flames. And even if the recipient never receives it, well, the sending matters, doesn't it? The intention. The act of wanting. You shift again. Your own cup now empty. The last dregs cooling into syrup at the base. The steam fogs your vision. Shadows melt into halos around the lanterns. The woman in the cherry-colored towel is now dozing, head resting against a stack of clean linen. Even the night seems still, his humming replaced by the quiet sound of fingers trailing across water's surface. You close your eyes for just a moment, and think about how many wishes have been whispered into baths like these. How many dreams floated through herbs and petals. How many hearts sent their secrets into the heat, hoping for an answer. And how some of them, maybe, even got one. You stir again in your bath, allowing your foot to drift lazily along the smooth stone base, toes curling with the heat. The surface ripples out like silk shaken in slow motion, and it becomes easy to imagine how water, this elemental, whispering thing, could ever be considered sacred. Because here, in this softly lit chamber of scent and sound, water does more than cleanse. It listens. And perhaps, if the old beliefs still hold, it remembers. Now think of this. In the 13th century, long before plumbing and perfume advertisements, water was treated with a sort of reverence that bordered on sensual awe. Particularly in settings like this, where public bathhouses in cities like Paris, Naples, and Toulouse doubled as both social stages and places of ritual intention. You shift, letting one arm rest along the marble lip of the bath. A pale shaft of light slips through the lattice above, striking a silver pitcher on the ledge. Inside, petals of damask rose steep in warm water. Their scent has softened now, not floral exactly, but something deeper. Earthy. Private. Beside the pitcher lies a small linen sachet, tied tight with a blue ribbon. You've seen these before, offered quietly by washerwomen for a coin or two, depending on the herbs used. Each blend has a purpose: love, luck, fertility, even forgetfulness. The one tied with blue and stitched with a tiny heart? That's for longing. Specifically, longing returned. You pick it up. Historians still argue whether these sachets were really magical or simply clever bathhouse merchandising. But like all things worn close to the skin, they became more than objects. They were intimate little secrets. And speaking of secrets, you turn your head and spot a figure partially concealed behind a steam curtain. She's crouched low, whispering into the water as if confessing. No one seems to notice except the scribe, who casually moves his inkwell an inch closer. You can't hear her words, but you recognize the motion, hands swirling, voice low, head bowed. She finishes with a gesture you've only ever seen once before, fingers pressed briefly to her lips, then to the surface of the water. A kiss, but symbolic. Like sealing a letter. Or perhaps sealing a fate. And then she disappears behind another curtain, leaving only a few ripples and the faint scent of myrrh. This practice of speaking to the bathwater is older than most realize. In some parts of early Renaissance Italy, young women were taught by their mothers to plant words in their bath on the night before a festival. Some whispered their desires, others recited half-remembered rhymes about beauty, marriage, or forbidden love. One common superstition claimed that if you soaked with bay leaves on the night of a full moon while thinking only of a single person, you would dream of them, vividly. Whether that dream included a proposal, a scandal, or a minor awkwardness involving spilled wine depended entirely on the moon's mood. You shift again and look to the far end of the chamber, where a more secluded basin glows amber under its own hanging lantern. That's the silent bath. No conversation, no clinking cups. Just intention. It's there that people go when they want their spell to work. No distractions. No flirtation. Just you, the steam, and whatever your heart is murmuring behind your ribs. You've never tried it yourself. Not yet. Closer by, the scribe is now sketching. Not writing for once, but using a piece of charcoal to draw something on a scrap of parchment. You peek over curious. It's a figure in a bath, not too detailed, but there's a crown of rosemary on her head, and her eyes are closed in an expression that feels too personal to be imagined. The scribe glances at his work, then folds it quickly and slips it beneath his seat. Not for sale, then. Just for keeping. You wonder who she is. A story for later, perhaps. The towel attendant passes again, offering lemon-scented water for rinsing. You accept, cupping it in your hands and pouring it slowly over your shoulder. The coolness strikes like a whisper of winter. It's refreshing, almost startling. And it makes you think oddly, of a story you heard once, about a knight who believed the shock of cold water would wake him from a love spell. A failed attempt, clearly, because he was said to have bathed daily for over a month, each time with the same silk ribbon tied around his wrist. Supposedly it belonged to the person he was trying to forget. Historians still argue whether the story is based on a real knight, or just romantic nonsense. But either way, the ribbon survived, tucked inside a book of psalms in an old Flemish monastery. Still faintly scented with lavender and loss. Across from you, someone is singing softly now, barely above a hum. It's not a song you know, but the melody curls like smoke. You catch the words moon, hands, and promise. Likely a love song. Maybe a spell. You begin to hum along without realizing it. And all around you, others are settling deeper. The steam has thickened. The air pulses with warmth. And each person in the space, from the knight to the washerwoman, seems tethered to something invisible, some string that binds heart to wish, breath to hope, body. It's getting late now. You can tell not by any clock, but by the candles, fewer remain lit. The attendants are quietly replacing wax stubs with fresh tapers, one by one, keeping the light low but steady. Shadows stretch longer. And as they do, you notice the petal-cloaked pitcher from earlier has been moved to the edge of the silent bath. The blue sachet is gone. You wonder who took it. You wonder, maybe, what they wished for. A delicate splash pulls your attention. Someone has just entered the far basin. The silent one. You recognize the figure immediately by the way she moves, fluid, deliberate, with the grace of someone who isn't guessing what she wants. It's the same woman who whispered to her water earlier. She slips into the steam like a whispered vowel, soft and barely heard. Her braid trails behind her, ribbons still damp from her earlier bath. As she settles into the silent bath, she places a folded cloth on the ledge beside her, carefully, reverently. Maybe it's her sachet. Or maybe it's just a kerchief. But she stares at it like it might answer her back. And no one says a word. Not because it's forbidden, but because the moment doesn't invite speech. It invites attention, stillness, and, if you dare admit it, a twinge of envy. Now, this basin is no ordinary pool. In towns like Blois, Avignon, and even smaller hamlets in Gascony, bathhouses often included a consecrated tub. Not religiously consecrated, mind you, but socially understood. Reserved for moments of solemnity or deep romantic ritual. You could use it for mourning. You could use it for hope. Or, as most preferred, you could use it to bind someone's heart to yours, gently, and with some plausible deniability. One French document from 1423 describes a widow who bathed in such a tub for 9 nights, each time wrapping a rosemary twig with a hair from the man she desired. On the 10th morning, he proposed. Was it magic? Coincidence? Pure charm? Historians still argue whether the entire story was invented by the woman herself, but even skeptics concede that she was remarried by spring. You let your gaze drift back to the present. There's something about how the woman's fingers move beneath the water. She's not washing. She's stirring. Slow circles. Clockwise, then paused, then reversed. Every now and then, she dips her fingers in and lifts a few droplets to her lips, not drinking, but tasting. As if decoding her own intentions. You think, is she reciting something again? And then you notice someone else. The knight. Yes, the same one who spoke to the scribe earlier in the day. His bath is just beyond the curtain, half visible. He's turned toward her, though not obviously. His expression is unreadable, but the slight furrow of his brow suggests he's listening. His arm rests along the edge of his basin. One leg is out, the other folded in. It's casual, but not indifferent. He lifts his hand slightly, only slightly, and with a single finger draws a small shape into the condensation on the stone wall beside him. A spiral. Then a cross over it. Then he wipes it away. A signal? A symbol? Or just nervous doodling? You smile to yourself. Courtship rituals take so many forms. You stretch out again, letting your foot slide across the tiled floor beneath the water. The texture is uneven in places, hand-laid mosaic, you guess, made of pink and green marble slivers. It's lovely, but not perfect. Rather like love. And now a thought trickles in. Are you the observer here? Or the observed? Because across the way, a new figure has entered. An attendant. Young, with a tray of herbal infusions and damp towels. But when she passes the knight, she drops something. A ribbon? No, a folded slip of paper. His eyes flick to it. A breath later, it's gone, vanished into his towel roll. He doesn't look around. He just leans back, presses the cloth briefly to his face, and exhales. The smell of bergamot wafts across the chamber. You don't know what's written there, if anything. But it's clear this bathhouse is more than a place for washing. It's a place of signals, wordless, perfumed, sometimes risky signals exchanged not in declarations but in glances, towels, gestures, scented water. You think about the power of subtlety. How someone can confess everything with a glance, or with a drop of oil on the water's surface. Back in your own basin, a floating petal brushes your collarbone. You pluck it away. The scent is faintly minty, with an undercurrent of something woodsy, juniper, perhaps. It reminds you of an old superstition, that if you smelled mint and pine on the same breeze during your bath, someone was about to dream of you that night. The idea makes you smile, despite yourself. You wonder what kind of dream it would be. Nearby, the scribe stands and stretches. His robe falls open slightly, not indecently, just loosely, and reveals a slender shoulder marked by ink smudges. He doesn't seem to mind. He retrieves his scroll and pencil stub, then wanders toward the woman in the silent bath. Not to speak. Just to sit nearby, outside her view, and begin to draw again. Quietly. Carefully. He glances up once. Then twice. She doesn't look at him. But her shoulders soften just slightly. It's all very discreet. Which is the most erotic part. You glance down into your water and see your reflection blurred by ripples. The light behind you casts soft halos through the steam. It is, you think, the closest a human ever gets to seeing themselves in a dream. You dip your hand again and think about the legends. About the belief that if a knight and his beloved each bathe in separate but adjacent basins, and then pour a single drop from each into the same goblet, the love will endure a lifetime, whether they drink it or not. Of course, bathhouse attendants know all these stories. That's why they offer goblets. That's why they pretend not to watch. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the heat relax your brow. It's late now, but no one is rushing. The room glows low with golden light, like the world has dimmed itself for this one long, perfect sigh. And somewhere nearby, a ribbon floats silently in the water, unclaimed. Waiting. The night deepens, but the glow in the bathhouse refuses to fade. You're not sure if it's the candles or simply the way warmth distorts time. Every moment stretches, lengthens, as if the water itself is unwilling to let the evening end. You lean your head back, resting against the cool edge of your basin, eyelids fluttering, not from sleep, not yet, but from surrender. A soft laugh cuts across the room, feminine, hushed, and conspiratorial. You peek through the mist. A pair of women in the far alcove have pulled a small cloth-wrapped parcel from beneath a bench. One carefully unwraps it, revealing a tiny glass vial the size of a fingertip. Even from here, the scent reaches you, something musky, sweet, and sharp, ambergris, perhaps, or civet mellowed with cinnamon. One of the women dabs the potion behind her ears, another into her cleavage, and both begin humming. Not a song you recognize. A chant? A ritual? A seduction? In the bathhouse, categories blur. You recall the rumors, those whispered between linen merchants and lace makers in the market, that certain apothecaries offered private blends meant to arouse the heart and confuse the brain. One infamous recipe, referred to only as La Potion Rose, was rumored to cause the recipient to blush uncontrollably. You shift in your seat, letting the warm water lap gently at your collarbones. Nearby, the scribe finishes sketching something into the margin of his scroll. Not the silent woman you notice, but the two women with the vial. A triangle of delight, caught in ink and expression. He's smiling now, not slyly, but fondly. As if he, too, has grown attached to these odd, candlelit rituals. Now, an attendant re-enters carrying a fresh bundle of towels and, more importantly, a lacquered wooden tray. On it sits a large bowl covered with linen, steam rising from beneath. The attendant approaches the knight's basin and presents it with a gentle bow. The knight lifts the cloth and exhales softly, pleased. What emerges is something you did not expect, a rose-colored liquid, thick as syrup and gently fizzing at the edges. A hot drink? A potion? No, something in between. Bath blends like this were once brewed from wine, beetroot, and clove oil, meant to be poured into the bath for both scent and effect. The mixture would tint the water and was believed to stimulate courage, or at least, poetic conversation. The knight tips a ladle of the stuff into his tub. Slowly, reverently, the liquid swirls, turns the bath into the color of a dusky petal, and spreads in concentric ripples. And that's when you notice, he's watching the silent woman again. Only this time, she's watching back. It's brief. A glance no longer than a sigh. But it happens. And then she closes her eyes, and so does he. And for a moment, nothing stirs. Not even the water. Bathhouses like this one were once the epicenters of coded communication. In places like Renaissance Milan or late medieval Paris, entire courtships played out over the course of weekly communal baths. There were rules, naturally, some stricter than others. But there was always space for a game. Enter the bath bloom. Not a flower, technically, but a cloth wrapped tightly with petals, herbs, and, in the center, a tiny note. If one floated into your basin and opened, you were meant to read it silently and never speak of it again. If you sent one, you were risking your dignity, your reputation, and in some cases, your heart. One bloom now floats toward the scribe. At first, you think it's an accident, until you see that it's wrapped in crimson silk, not standard linen. He glances around, No one moves. He plucks it gently from the water, unwinds it, and finds inside a single red feather. He blinks, then smiles, wide and startled. The feather is a known signal among poets. It means answer me with rhyme. You can't help but chuckle. Some things never change. To your left, another guest, a woman with a pale blue scarf, lifts a small silver mirror from her basket and checks her reflection by candlelight. But not her face. No, she's looking at her lips. She dabs a paste from a tiny pot, rubs it in, and smiles. The mirror catches the light, and for a second, you catch your own reflection beside hers, warmer, a little sleepier, but amused. Historians still argue whether such cosmetics actually had aphrodisiac qualities, but contemporary sources describe them as melting the gaze, which, frankly, is more poetic than science ever needs to be. Across the room, someone sneezes. A giggle. A shush. Another drop of rose potion ripples through the night's water. And then a hush. Someone is singing again. This time, it's unmistakably a lullaby, but in a dialect you don't know. Something Breton, maybe? Occitan? Doesn't matter. It's breathy and warm and stretches across the tiles like a woven shawl. You close your eyes and let it settle into your spine. There's something undeniably sensual about all of this. But it's never vulgar. You run your fingers through your hair, now heavy with steam, and imagine the old tales, the ones of bathhouse trysts that led to legends. Of knights who left behind a ring in the basin, only to have it returned, weeks later, with a kiss pressed into the wax seal envelope. Of washerwomen who composed couplets in lavender water and poured them onto passing garments. Of lords who dropped poems into buckets of rinse water, hoping the meaning would soak into their lover's skin. You wonder how many poems went unanswered. You wonder how many were never meant to be. The steam thickens. The candles dim. The hush lengthens. You don't know how long you've been here now. Hours? A lifetime? Maybe only minutes. But as the final petal drifts past your elbow, pale and fragrant and ghostly in the golden light, you understand something very simple. Not every love spell needs to work. Some just need to be cast. You reach for the nearest ladle and scoop up a portion of the now rose-hued water, watching it spill slowly between your fingers. The scent clings delicately, velvety, a touch sweet, and just this side of mysterious. Somewhere behind you, the gentle scrape of ceramic against tiles signals another potion being stirred in. There's an unspoken agreement in this bathhouse. No one asks, but everyone notices. You glance again toward the scribe. His red feather sits drying on a nearby stone, a signal that he's crafting his response. His gaze is distant now, as if the tiles themselves might offer a rhyme. Beside him, his parchment has begun to curl at the corners, and his inkpot is perched precariously on a folded towel. He dips his pen with exaggerated care and writes one word, then scratches it out. You're momentarily distracted by the arrival of something odd. A girl, no more than 10, darts through the steam holding a folded cloth above her head like a crown. An attendant scurries after her, muttering in mock frustration. The girl disappears through a curtained archway, leaving behind a trail of giggles and wet footprints shaped like little crescent moons. It reminds you, this bathhouse is not only for flirtation. It is, strangely enough, also for families, old friends, and weary travelers. Even the most sensual of spaces holds space for joy. Still, you can't help but follow the scribe's progress out of the corner of your eye. He's writing something long now, his pen sweeping and confident, curling lines. If you had to guess, you'd say couplets. Rhyming ones. Perhaps even dangerous ones. You smile to yourself. Meanwhile, in the corner closest to the central fountain, a pair of noblewomen are exchanging candles. One offers a short beeswax taper dipped in green pigment. The other holds a taller candle, etched with faint runes that glint in the flickering light. They swap the items solemnly, almost ritually, and then turn their backs on each other, placing the candles at opposite ends of the room. This, you recall, is one of the bathhouse's oldest traditions, candle matchmaking. A curious blend of superstition and symbolism. It is said that exchanging candles allows you to burn for someone else without ever speaking aloud. A sweet sort of metaphor. Also a clever way to avoid being caught passing notes. According to a 16th century account from a courtier named Leonard de Rouvray, the practice began as a joke. An overly poetic gentleman allegedly placed a lit candle near a woman's towel to declare that her presence melted his resolve. She responded by blowing it out with a laugh, and the gesture spread like fire. Historians still argue whether candle gifting was ever officially banned by any court, but we do know it became so popular in Versailles that wax prices tripled during certain festivals. Which explains the growing economy of whisper chandlers, specialists who sold subtly infused candles meant to carry coded meanings, longing, admiration, apology, or even invitation. The woman with the green candle now lights it, and presses her fingertips to the flame briefly before drawing her hand away with a shiver. You notice her eyes dart across the room. They land on a man reclining beneath a mosaic arch. He notices her too. They do not speak. They don't need to. You're beginning to understand how much of Bathhouse romance relied not on boldness, but timing. On proximity, not pursuit. Back at your own station, the water has cooled just enough to make your limbs feel like softened butter. You press your forehead against your knees, listening as more murmurs rise and fall like distant whine through reeds. Some bathers are talking about the weather. Others debate the best type of goose fat for skin softening. Apparently it's early autumn goose, not winter fat. Who knew? Suddenly, someone asks a question in a stage whisper. Did you hear about the woman who bottled her bath water? There's a ripple of amused groans. You perk up. The whisperer continues. Apparently, she sent it to her suitor sealed with red wax and a ribbon, and told him to bathe in it if he missed her. Soft laughter follows. One man mutters, "Imagine being haunted by someone else's rosewater," and another counters, "Sounds like a very clean ghost." But the tradition isn't entirely fictional. Records exist, though sparse and hotly contested, that nobles occasionally exchanged bathwater in ornate glass vessels. Some were believed to retain the scent of the sender for days, and others were mixed with personal tokens, a sprig of rosemary, a thread of hair, or in rare cases, a whisper-written message inked with lemon and revealed only by candle heat. You glance down at your own tub. The idea is odd, slightly absurd, yet oddly romantic. It's hard to decide if you'd be flattered or creeped out. Probably both. The scent of honey and ash drifts in again. Someone has added yet another mixture to their bath. This one smells vaguely of cinnamon bark and resin. You suspect it's a calming blend, possibly linked to Saint Dymphna, a lesser-known figure occasionally invoked in times of restless love or turbulent sleep. There's a worn fresco of her in the alcove to your right, haloed, serene, and watching over the steaming chaos with a small, amused smile. The scribe, at long last, stands. He places his poem, still damp with ink, at the edge of the tiled bench and walks away without a word. No glance behind. No flourish. Just wet footsteps trailing into the back corridor. Moments later, the red-feathered woman crosses the room and retrieves it. She reads silently, her expression unreadable. Then, she folds the parchment, tucks it beneath her belt, and returns to her seat. She does not look for him. You find the restraint oddly stirring. Somewhere near the entrance, a bell chimes. The first hour of moonrise. One by one, bathers begin to drain their tubs. The floor warms as the water spills through channels carved into the tile, disappearing into the ancient plumbing that somehow still works, centuries later. You linger, not ready to leave. The room is quieter now, as if the walls have absorbed all the gossip and sighs, and are now content to keep the secrets warm for another night. One more ladle of water, poured over your shoulders. One last breath of rose, ash, and beeswax. You close your eyes and imagine writing a message in bathwater, a single word that blooms in the steam and fades before it's spoken. That, you decide, is the best kind of spell. The next evening, you find yourself once again stepping through the velvet-curtained archway of the bathhouse, and tonight, the steam feels flirtatious. It curls around your ankle. You choose a different tub this time, one nearer to the mural of Venus rising from her shell, surrounded by winged cupids who all look a little too smug. The water here is warmer, infused with thyme and something floral you can't quite name, maybe marjoram or that one leaf no one can pronounce but everyone says is good for the nerves. You ease in, letting your spine soften against the heated tile, and this time, you're watching the space with more deliberate interest. You've learned the rhythms now. The coded glances. The accidental spills. The intentional reading of robe chords. Bathhouse flirtation, you realize, is all about choreography, a silent ballet of soaked sleeves, sidelong gazes, and drop towels. Across the chamber, a woman performs what's known as the curtain test. She steps behind one of the sheer drapes that divides the bath's inner sanctum from the outer walkways. If someone follows, it's an invitation. If they don't, it was simply a detour to the lavender soap. Tonight, someone follows. He's blushing so red you wonder if he might actually overheat. Back near the arched windows, a trio of young courtiers recline like cats in the sun, even though it's well past twilight. One hums an old tune, something about linden trees and forgotten kisses, while another is twisting her hair into tiny, symmetrical knots, a medieval style that was believed to trap affection in the folds. Historians still argue whether this elaborate braiding custom actually originated in love rituals or was simply a practical way to dry hair evenly. But the poems left behind seem to suggest otherwise. Many contain lines like "Her knots held the promise of spring," or "Each twist a tether to my heart." You, meanwhile, are trying not to drift off entirely. The warmth of the bath is a lullaby in itself. But your attention is snapped back by a soft, playful splash. A man nearby, perhaps intentionally, perhaps not, has flicked water with his toe in your direction. He doesn't apologize. He just raises a single eyebrow and resumes fiddling with his sandal strap. You are now in what seasoned bathgoers call the game. The rules are vague, unspoken, and entirely based on whether you feel like playing. You glance down, drag your fingers through the water, and gently push a ripple back toward him. He catches it. A small, contented smirk appears. No further words are exchanged. Later, as you recline again, a commotion begins at the east end of the chamber. A large figure enters, not imposing, but radiant in presence. Wrapped in plum-colored linen, she glides toward the tiled dais where the bathhouse singers usually perform. Tonight, however, she carries no harp. Instead, she brings a mirror. No ordinary one either. This is a bronze-framed, hand-polished piece, large enough to reflect the entire corner of the room in warm amber hues. She places it with ceremony. Faces turn, but no one dares speak yet. Then she steps aside. The bathers begin to pass before the mirror, one by one. Some pretend not to care. Some glance quickly. Others linger, adjusting the fall of their robes, checking the sheen of their hair, or, more boldly, watching how someone else watches them. This is the night of the reflection. An irregular but eagerly awaited tradition in which vanity is not only allowed, it's encouraged. The premise? To catch someone admiring you when they think you're not looking. It's silly. And soft. And oddly thrilling. You wait until the third wave has passed, then rise and approach. Your reflection greets you with a hint of steam-blurred mystery. You look taller. Or maybe it's the candlelight. Either way, you allow yourself a small smile. When you glance sideways, you find someone already watching. A man with ink-stained thumbs. The scribe again. You nod barely. He returns it. Neither of you moves toward the other. And yet, that's enough. Later, you return to your tub to find a folded towel with a pressed flower atop it. A violet. Crushed just enough to release its scent. You don't need to ask who placed it. The red feather peeks from behind a statue nearby. You consider whether to press the flower between the pages of a book, or between the folds of your next letter. Or perhaps, you'll simply place it on the windowsill and let the breeze decide its fate. Elsewhere, a group has gathered around a narrow channel of water near the floor, the bathhouse stream that carries excess heat out to the kitchen gardens. Some guests lean down to drop flower petals into the current. This is part of another tradition, petal drifting. Each color holds meaning. red for passion, white for hope, yellow for mischief, purple for I'm watching you but pretending I'm not, blue for apology. You suspect several petals are carrying messages tonight, though whether they're returned remains to be seen. An elderly attendant walks past carrying a basket of herbal bundles. She hands one to each bather, a small roll of thyme, sage, and rosemary bound with a ribbon. You unwrap yours to find a tiny scrap of parchment tucked inside. It reads, in elegantly careless script, for scent. Or secrets. You smile. The bathhouse is nothing if not poetic. That's when you notice someone using the mirrored steam on the wall tiles to trace a phrase with their fingertip. It vanishes almost immediately, but not before you catch the word remember. A message, maybe? Or a wish. You stretch once more, letting the bath lull you into softness, your thoughts swimming somewhere between rosewater and poetry. It's not so much about what happens here, you realize, it's about what might happen. The possibility of a word spoken, or a gaze returned. Of a ripple echoing back. And in this candlelit world of curtain glances and floating violets, even the smallest gesture can bloom into a story. A toe splash. A towel fold. A mirror glance. The bathhouse holds them all. You return again the next evening, as if tugged by invisible strings spun from lavender and mischief. The corridors of the bathhouse feel warmer tonight, and the air is thick with something richer than just steam. Maybe it's the scent of melting beeswax candles or the slow simmer of anticipation. Or maybe you're simply getting used to the way the place makes you feel, like a character in a story you're writing as you live it. You take your time this time. You untie your laces with care, letting each layer of fabric slip like a curtain on a miniature stage. Beneath your tunic, your chemise rustles quietly. You wonder if anyone's watching, then chuckle softly. Of course someone is. This is the bathhouse, not a monastery. Tonight you choose a spot beside the heated mosaic bench, where the tile glows with embedded shells and tiny pieces of amber. The warmth seeps into your thighs and lower back as you sink into the shallow end of the pool. A handful of rose petals drifts lazily on the surface. You idly scoop one up and let it rest on your palm. It wobbles with the movement of the water, like it's shy about being noticed. Just then, a splash echoes across the chamber, followed by a chorus of amused gasps. You glance over to see a woman emerging dramatically from one of the curtained stalls. Her foot slips ever so slightly, enough to cause a splash, but not a fall. She regains her balance with the flair of someone used to being watched, and offers an exaggerated curtsy to no one in particular. It is a well-timed theatrical gesture, part of what the bathhouse regulars call tunic slips, those deliberate, harmless accidents designed to capture brief attention without committing to conversation. You've seen it before. A robe that unknots just a little too easily, a towel that takes its sweet time being retrieved, a hairpin that tumbles precisely into the path of someone interesting. It's all a game, played at half speed and with full awareness. Historians still argue whether these coded movements evolved from actual romantic customs or from dramatic rituals tied to pre-Christian springtime festivals. Either way, the result is the same: eyes that linger, hands that brush, and hearts that, at least for a moment, flutter like candle flames. A few feet away, a man in his mid-20s is doing his own variation on the routine. He sits in a higher bath, one of the raised stone tubs used for herbal steeps, casually fiddling with the lace of his sleeve. Every few moments, he pauses and glances around, not to make sure no one is looking, but to make sure someone is. When his eyes meet yours, he smiles, then drops one of his sandals into the water, where it bumps gently against your leg. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs as if to say, "Guess I'll have to come fetch it." Instead, you pick it up with your toes and slowly nudge it back in his direction. He grins. You win, he mouths silently. You nod, not in victory, but in appreciation. It's in these tiny, wordless moments that the magic of the bathhouse is distilled, where the rules are soft as lather, and every gesture is a love poem written in vapor. And speaking of love poems, A voice begins humming from behind the drapery wall, a soft baritone, low and melodic. The tune is unfamiliar, but the rhythm is unmistakably one of courtship. You listen closely, not just for the notes, but for the rustle of silk, the shift of limbs, the little sounds that make a bathhouse alive with possibility. Then, in a playful mood, you rise from your tub and stretch dramatically, not with arrogance, but the kind of sleepy contentment that invites others to watch without guilt. A few gazes flicker toward you. One lingers. You approach the long marble bench where robes are kept warm by hidden pots of heated stones. You retrieve yours, folded neatly, smelling faintly of rosemary and smoke. But you don't put it on. Instead, you let it drape loosely over one arm, as you saunter toward the corner nook with its own curtain. You pause there, looking back. You're not entirely surprised to see someone rise to follow. Inside the nook, the air is a little cooler, perfumed with lingering sandalwood and something fainter, violet maybe. The lighting is lower. No words are spoken. You dip a hand into the small basin of water and splash your shoulders gently, pretending you don't notice the other presence yet. Finally, you glance sideways. The person, a dark-haired scribe, you think, bows slightly. Not a court bow. A bathhouse bow. Subtle. Personal. And warm. You smile. Just a little. Outside, the bathhouse has grown noisier. Someone is reciting a verse aloud from memory, badly, and another bather is laughing hard enough to cause actual waves in the communal pool. The sound ripples toward you and fades like the tail end of a dream. You linger in the corner a little longer than needed. Just long enough to be noticed. Just long enough to feel noticed. When you return to the central pool, the scribe disappears behind a different curtain, and you don't follow. That's not the rhythm tonight. Sometimes, in the bathhouse, attention is the whole exchange. You resume your seat by the mosaic bench and find a fresh sprig of mint waiting where your robe had been. It's a bathhouse tradition, an herb left in place of conversation. You press it between your palms, inhale its brightness, and smile to yourself. Later that night, as you prepare to leave, the air outside the bathhouse is cooler than expected. The memory of the tunic slip, the returned sandal, the mint sprig, they're enough to warm you all the way home. You return 2 days later, and this time, the mood has shifted. There's a softness in the atmosphere, as if the whole bathhouse has taken a deep sigh. The scent of almond oil hangs in the air, and a musician with a cracked lute quietly strums near the tiled window alcove. His melody is slow and melancholic, but not sad, just sleepy, like a yawn woven into a lullaby. Tonight, your destination is one of the smaller, shallower basins at the back, near where the heated floors warm the stone from beneath. It's known among the regulars as the place where lovers left things behind, notes, ribbons, even teeth once, though that was more of a wrestling accident than an amorous mishap. As you ease into the water, you spot something curious glinting near the drain, a scrap of parchment, damp but intact, wedged between 2 tiles. Naturally, you fish it out. This is, after all, what you've come for, bits of other people's stories. The ink is smudged, and the parchment curls at the edges, but the words are legible enough to spark a flush in your cheeks. It's a poem. A love poem. Short, awkward, earnest. And it rhymes, which frankly might be its boldest trait. You read the first few lines. My heart is a sponge, / and your words soak me true, / I'd rather be soggy / than apart from you. You snort, the sound bouncing off the curved ceiling above. It's not exactly Ovid, but it's heartfelt. And if anything, the clumsiness makes it better. Historians still argue whether these bathhouse poems were meant for real recipients, or merely written as part of an unspoken ritual, something done to cleanse not just the body, but the burden of unspoken infatuation. Like carving initials into a tree, or whispering wishes into a well. And this one? Judging by the stain of rose oil on the paper, you'd guess the author wore one of those fancy scented wristbands sold near the candle vendor's stall. Which narrows it down to half the population of Versailles, probably. You fold the note and tuck it into your robe pocket, unsure if you'll keep it forever or forget it by dawn. That's the thing about bathhouse tokens. They're slippery, like the memories themselves. A servant walks by carrying a tray of carved soaps shaped like fruit. The peach-shaped one actually smells like peach. The fig, less so. He's offering them in exchange for coin or compliment. You offer a wink. He blushes, leaves two at your feet, and scurries off. You pocket the peach. Moments later, a man eases into the basin opposite yours. He has the kind of presence that's hard to ignore, not because he's loud or imposing, but because he's very aware of the effect he has. His towel is knotted precisely low enough to be considered daring, and he adjusts it in a way that could generously be described as choreographed. Mind if I share your drain? He asks with a mock seriousness that implies this is not his first line, nor his best. Only if you brought verse, you reply. He grins. I bring better than verse. I bring soap that looks like a pear. You raise a skeptical brow. Fig. He shrugs, undeterred. Still smells nice. You let him stay. The conversation meanders like steam, weightless and warm. He tells you he's a part-time musician, part-time tailor's apprentice, full-time heartbreaker. You tell him you once tried to bottle bathwater to preserve a mood and accidentally created a mildew potion. He laughs, and it's a good laugh, wide and honest. In the lull that follows, you both look down at the drain. The poem has floated back up. You both read it again, aloud this time, trading lines. You do the dramatic voice. He does the swooning sighs. It becomes a You lift a hand from the water and trace letters into the mist clinging to the tile beside you. They disappear as quickly as they form, but for a moment, your message lingers. I came for warmth, / found verse and steam, / and stayed because / you made it seem / like flirtation could float. He claps softly, eyes wide. A masterpiece. A doodle, you correct. A soggy doodle. Still, something's been exchanged, and you both feel it. Not a promise. Not even a flirtation with future. Just an understanding. Bathhouse evenings are stitched from steam and stories, and tonight, yours happen to thread together. As he rises to leave, his towel nearly gives way. He catches it, barely. That one was not intentional, he says, laughing as he disappears into the curtained exit. You believe him. Mostly. Alone again, you stare at the drain. It's quiet now. The only sound is the faint drip of water down the marble ledge, and the echo of someone reciting a recipe for soup in the outer chamber. Potato and leek, you think. Very romantic. You close your eyes and rest your arms along the edge of the bath. The water sways around you gently. You imagine the love poem dissolving slowly, each inked word becoming part of the bath itself, absorbed into the heat and salt and laughter of 1,000 nights like this one. One day, perhaps someone will drain this pool and find the sediments of longing settled at the bottom like soft sand, poems, petals, the memory of accidental slips, and the warmth of shared silence. For now, though, you simply float, your hair fanning behind you like seaweed, your mind heavy with softness. You feel deliciously weightless, suspended in verse and warmth, and the faint afterscent of peach-shaped soap. The next evening, you return with a peculiar sense of expectation. Not quite hope, not quite curiosity, something in between. Perhaps it's the lingering warmth of yesterday's poem, or perhaps it's the fig-scented soap still faintly wafting from your robe's inner seam. Regardless, you step through the bathhouse curtains as though entering a dream that politely waited for your return. Tonight the water has been infused with orange blossom. You catch it immediately, a zesty sweetness that clings to the air and settles on your skin like a flirtatious ghost. A washerwoman is singing somewhere near the back in a slow, sultry alto. You can't make out the words, but you imagine they involve longing, or maybe laundry. Your destination this time is not the shallow drain-scribed basin, but a more central tub known informally as the slipstream. Not for the water, but for the frequent wardrobe mishaps that seem to occur there with suspicious regularity. You fold yourself into the water. It's warmer than usual. Almost hot. Someone has clearly bribed the fire tenders. To your left, a small group huddles near a pile of discarded tunics, whispering. Their laughter is too quiet to follow, but just loud enough to invite suspicion. A few giggles dissolve into sudden, exaggerated coughing fits, and one of them discreetly disappears behind a heavy linen curtain. You don't look much. To your right, a young man is attempting to lather his chest with a piece of soap the size of a coin. He's doing so with theatrical effort, grunting softly, pretending it slips from his fingers, then catching it midair. He repeats this about 5 times. By the 6th, it's impressive in a way that's difficult to admit aloud. You suspect he's performing for someone. Possibly you. But your mind is elsewhere. Because today, you've brought something. A bar of soap. Not just any soap. A soap gifted to you weeks ago by a candle vendor with a lopsided grin and too much coal around his eyes. He told you it was good for making impressions. You assumed he meant skin. You now suspect he meant something else. It's pale green, shaped like a seashell, and smells of time and something vaguely nostalgic, maybe the scent of an old love letter or the inside of a velvet-lined box. You cradle it in your palm and begin to lather slowly. Intentionally. The soap softens with surprising speed, and you find yourself drawing small spirals on your arm without thinking. Spirals, loops, and finally, a letter. An initial. You rinse it away, but the water seems to memorize the shape anyway. Historians still argue whether knights ever wrote love spells into soap, but many agree that messages drawn onto wet skin, especially during moments of ritual or romance, held potent symbolic value. Whether the spell worked depended not on the ink, but the intention. And tonight your intention hums beneath your skin like a kettle beginning to boil. You turn the soap over and find, to your astonishment, something carved into the base. Not a word, exactly, more a glyph. A stylized heart, half melted by time and handling, almost lost to the contours of the bar. It startles you more than it should. As if the soap has whispered back. Behind you, a voice speaks. That's a rather suggestive brand of lathering. You don't startle. You've been half expecting him. It's the same man from last night. Less towel this time. More grin. Just trying to keep up with the local customs, you murmur, not turning your head. He eases into the bath beside you, water rising gently between you both. Neither of you touch, but the space between your shoulders seems suddenly charged. Like static. Like a breath waiting to be finished. I brought you something, he says after a pause. You glance sideways. He lifts a tiny scroll, no bigger than your thumb, from a dry pouch at the edge of the bath. It's tied with a damp ribbon, lavender in color. Faded from reuse, or maybe just bashfulness. You raise a brow. It's not a poem, is it? It rhymes. Terribly. You hold out your hand. He places the scroll on your palm. His fingers brush yours. Just briefly. You untie it. Roses are wilting, / the soaps are all slippery. / but your eyes make me stumble, / and I blame it on mystery. You snort. Again. You may be forming a habit. You really want to be a bathhouse bard, don't you? Desperately, he says. I heard it pays in free towels and lingering eye contact. You pause. Then, quietly, you're doing quite well. The steam around you thickens. It curls up like incense, softening the lines between your faces. There's an intimacy here that has nothing to do with touch, just a shared silence, broken only by the occasional drip from the ceiling. A few feet away, the soap-slipping man has given up and is now floating with his arms dramatically draped over the basin edge, humming a song you think you know. Something about pomegranates. Or maybe peaches. It's hard to tell. You glance at your seashell soap. It's down to a sliver. Without thinking, you press it gently to the back of your companion's hand, just long enough to leave a faint spiral. The soap doesn't write anymore, it simply implies. But the intention remains. He studies the mark, then meets your gaze. Spell? He asks. Maybe, you reply. Or maybe just a doodle. I like doodles. He leans back, arms behind his head, and sighs. Do you think the old knights ever got pruny? You laugh. I think they'd consider it a badge of honor. He nods, mock serious. Wrinkles earned in the service of passion. You both lapse into silence, and it stretches comfortably. Around you, the sounds of the bathhouse grow fainter. Footsteps on stone, a distant splash, someone sneezing in rhythm with the music. You rest your head on the edge of the basin and close your eyes. The soap sliver floats away. Maybe tomorrow you'll bring your own verse. Or maybe you'll just come to float, and listen, and let your skin remember every small moment of steam and suggestion. After all, you're not just bathing. You're part of something now. Tonight the air in the bathhouse feels different, charged, but not in an obvious way. It's quieter for one. Fewer voices echoing through the tiled corridors. Fewer soft splashes and less laughter behind curtains. The hush feels reverent, almost ceremonial, like the place has slipped into one of its secret moods. You pass through the archway slowly, barefoot and robe-clad, clutching a small vial nestled in a cloth pouch. You weren't sure you were going to bring it, but here you are. The vial contains holy water. Or, well, allegedly. It was given to you by a linen vendor who claimed it was blessed by a traveling friar and ideal for bathing on auspicious evenings. You didn't have the heart to tell him that auspicious evenings for you mostly involved forgetting your socks matched. Still, you've saved it for something special. And tonight feels specific. You head toward the alcove known affectionately as the petal niche. It's less a bath and more a floral shrine disguised as a tub, always overflowing with rosewater, floating lavender heads, and too many petals for anyone with allergies. A sign overhead reads, "For reflective soaking and emotional processing only." Tonight, it's empty. You step in, the petal-laced water closing around your ankles with a pleasant shiver. Someone's added chamomile. Maybe fennel. The bath feels like a sleepy tea dream. You settle into the warmth and uncork the vial. Its contents shimmer. Not gold exactly. More like melted starlight. Or wishful thinking. You pour it slowly into the bath, and the surface gleams and ripples. You expect something dramatic, maybe a hymn playing faintly from the tiles, or doves appearing from the rafters. Instead, there's only a soft sigh. From the water. Or maybe from you. Across the bath, a curtain rustles. He appears again. Not suddenly, not dramatically. Just comfortably. Like he's returned from a place you only dreamt about. Tonight he carries something under his arm. A rolled tapestry? A large towel? A picnic blanket? Your imagination provides many options, most of them unhelpful. Blessing the bath? He asks, nodding toward your now glittery soak. Holy water, you explain. He arches an eyebrow. Feeling impure? Just thorough. He lowers himself into the bath across from you, giving the rose petals a gentle sweep with his hands. They drift, rearranged by fate or flirtation. It's hard to say. He unrolls the bundle. It's a garment. Not for him, for a statue. A robe of blue linen, embroidered with tiny stars. At the center, the unmistakable shape of a saint. Saint Agnes. You don't need to ask why. In the folklore of the bathhouse, and indeed, many whispered corners of Europe, Saint Agnes was the patroness of purity, devotion, and oddly enough, night whispers. She was said to guard the dreams of young lovers and bless secret vows spoken in steam. He drapes the robe reverently over a carved figure embedded in the stone wall. You hadn't noticed her before. Half eroded, water-stained, but unmistakably there. A female figure with upturned palms, carved eyes gazing skyward. She's been here longer than the plumbing, he says softly. You nod. Because there's nothing else to say. In moments like this, the line between ritual and romance begins to blur. Whether Saint Agnes hears anything is irrelevant. What matters is that someone speaks to her. Historians still argue whether Agnes was ever associated with bath rituals, he muses, scooping up a fistful of chamomile petals. Some say it was invented by a lovesick apothecary. Others blame a rogue bishop who believed in exfoliation. You smile. And what do you believe? He shrugs. I believe people are always looking for ways to confess without being overheard. You lean back, letting the petals press against your skin like sleepy moths. The water tingles faintly, maybe the holy water, maybe your imagination doing somersaults again. He clears his throat. Would you like to make a vow? You blink. To whom? To the water. To the saint. To me. Dealer's choice. You hesitate. Not out of fear, but because your heart is thudding in your chest like it's trying to form a sentence. Finally, softly, only if you make one too. He nods once, solemn. Together then? You both close your eyes. He begins. I vow to never steal another soap again, unless it smells undeniably delicious. You laugh under your breath, then speak. I vow to remember that prune skin is a badge of intimacy. He opens one eye. Very specific. You smirk. I had a long soak to think about it. He closes his eyes again. I vow to write better poems. Or at least shorter ones. I vow to stop pretending I don't enjoy them. Silence. Then, a final, quiet breath shared between you, half vow, half unspoken question. And the petals swirl like they've heard something sacred. The candlelight dims around you. Either it's grown late, or the bathhouse has decided you've done enough reflecting for one night. You both rise slowly, the water sluicing from your robes and pooling at your feet like melted reverie. The statue of Saint Agnes glistens faintly in the shadows, her blue robe darkening with moisture. He takes your hand. Not with urgency. With gravity. You'll come back tomorrow? He asks. As long as they haven't run out of petals. And so you walk, barefoot and light-hearted, through the halls of steam and stone. Past curtain flutters and lingering perfumes. Past whispered giggles and the occasional misplaced sock. Outside, the night is cool. The stars blink approvingly, and somewhere, very far away, a bell tolls midnight. Back in the bathhouse, the holy water settles. The petals regather. And Saint Agnes, stone-faced and slightly damp, keeps her silent vigil over every whispered vow. You return the next evening, toes already tingling with anticipation. The cobbled walkways feel warmer tonight. Maybe it's the heat from the bathhouse seeping into your imagination. Or maybe it's just the thrill of not knowing what to expect next. You slip past the gossipy basket weavers and the sandalmaker's apprentice who's still trying to grow facial hair, nodding politely to the fruit vendor who offers you a pomegranate, as if it's a secret. You take it. Not for hunger, but because it feels fitting to carry something round, red, and vaguely suggestive. Inside the bathhouse, the air is heavier than usual. Steam curls down the corridors like curious fingers, guiding you back toward the petal niche. The same alcove where you shared a vow, or something like it, just 24 hours ago. But tonight there's a new addition. Floating in a polished brass basin beside the bath are a dozen blooms, each delicately clipped at the stem and trimmed to float evenly on the water's surface. Lavender, rose, peony, forget-me-not, and a few you can't identify. It's less a bouquet, more a riddle. A small card leans against the basin's rim. No signature, just 2 words, try this. You stare at the flowers. They're not just pretty, they're part of something. It's the flower float test. A medieval ritual used by would-be lovers, dream interpreters, and overly poetic herbalists who believed that how a flower floated in water could reveal the truth about someone's heart. You weren't supposed to admit you took it seriously, of course. But everyone did. Secretly. Here's how it worked. Choose a flower, place it on the water, then whisper a name, or a hope, and watch. If the flower floated steadily, you choose a soft pink peony. Not because of its meaning, though you recall someone once saying it symbolized bashful affection, but because it reminds you of cheeks flushed from warmth. Or from compliments you pretend not to enjoy. You place the flower on the surface, lean in close, and whisper a name. Yes, his name. The petals quiver. The bloom spins once. Pauses. Then drifts slowly, achingly, toward a pale blue cornflower nearby. You don't breathe. You just watch. And then you hear a voice behind you. Interesting choice. I would have gone with the chamomile. You turn. He's holding a towel, a mischievous smirk, and a guilty-looking lavender stem tucked behind one ear. Trying to outfloat me? You ask. He grins. I already did. Mine pirouette directly into yours. You raise an eyebrow. So what does that mean? He shrugs. Historians still argue whether that's love or a symptom of uneven floorboards. You both laugh. The steam curls higher, like it's enjoying the show. Together you settle into the water. No grand declarations tonight, no vows or holy water, just warmth, whispers, and the occasional flower brushing your shoulder like a bashful ghost. He begins telling you about a poet who supposedly bathed only during eclipses and insisted that bathing by candlelight made one's dreams more flavorful. You don't know if he's making it up, but it hardly matters. The story is soft around the edges, its facts folded in dream logic and laced with sleepy charm. Then he pulls a small wooden box from behind a towel stack and opens it to reveal dried flower petals, sorted by type. Want to play matchmaker? He asks. The game is simple. Choose 2 petals and let them float. If they drift apart, the match is doomed. If they cling or cross paths, they're meant to be. You pick a marigold and a violet. He picks sage and a petal from something that might once have been a lily. You both lean in, watching the petals navigate miniature tidal dramas. One pair clings. One pair sinks. One spins in teasing circles. He looks at you seriously for a moment. You ever think love is just the art of floating towards someone, without sinking? You nod. Because it's either that or cry into your own kneecaps. People like to romanticize love spells, he continues. But I think the best ones are really just good conversations disguised as rituals. You look around at the soft light, the velvety silence, the flowers floating like forgotten kisses, and realize he might be right. The test doesn't matter. The peony's opinion doesn't matter. What matters is this moment. This warmth. This very gentle unraveling of walls and hesitation. Later, as you dry off and wrap yourself in a robe that smells faintly of elderflower, he gently presses something into your hand. A folded note. You open it back in your room, after the candles have been extinguished, and your skin still remembers the heat of the bath. The note simply reads, "Next time, I'll bring rosemary. They say it's for remembrance. But I like the way it floats." You don't sleep immediately. Instead, you lie still under a heap of embroidered linen, fingers curled loosely around that note, the scent of steam and floral memory still clinging to your skin. There's something stubbornly pleasant about it all, like leftover sweetness at the bottom of a honey jar. Sticky, faintly fragrant, and worth the trouble. The next day, the bathhouse is quieter. Fewer patrons. A slightly melancholic air, as though even the stone tiles have settled into a slower rhythm. You suspect the rosemary he mentioned won't be here tonight. He has that kind of timing, carefully inconsistent, just enough to keep you looking. But you return anyway. And when you do, you're greeted by a small jar set beside your usual basin. It's corked, neatly labeled, and faintly warm to the touch. A tag dangles off one side with calligraphy you recognize, for remembrance, not refrigeration. Inside the jar? Bathwater. Yours, probably. Possibly mixed with his. Possibly enchanted. Or maybe just an inside joke with too many layers to decode in a single glance. You sniff the contents. Floral, woody, with a curious bass note that might be sassafras or might be the subtle ego of someone who enjoys mixing metaphors and herbs. This isn't entirely unheard of, by the way. During certain corners of the Renaissance, mostly in wealthier pockets of Florence and bits of southern France, it became fashionable among nobles to bottle each other's bathwater. Not for drinking, thank goodness, but as a keepsake. A charm. A statement of having been close enough to touch, soak, mingle. Historians still argue whether these gestures were acts of affection or weird flexes about who had the better blend of oils. Either way, it wasn't unusual to see tiny flasks of Lady Juliet's afternoon steep past discreetly at court. You uncork the jar and swirl the contents thoughtfully. You won't keep it forever. But tonight, it stays with you. Just like that little story the bathhouse keeper tells as you soak again. She's ancient, this woman. Crooked like a question mark and always humming off-key. Tonight, she pauses by your basin, eyeing the jar and your expression in equal measure. You know, she says, some believe bathwater holds memory. Not just scent or heat, but the mood of it. You raise an eyebrow. Memory? She nods. They'd say if you bottle it too long, it remembers too much. Uncork it on a bad day, and all your past sadness comes spilling back. You glance at your jar. Suddenly it feels a bit heavier. But she continues, smiling with more teeth than expected. If you cork it right after laughter, or love, or hope, then you can warm it on a windowsill and breathe in a little of yesterday's joy. You tell her thank you? You mean it. She disappears behind a curtain of mint-scented steam, and you think you hear her humming again. The tune is better this time. Or maybe you've just stopped resisting the bathhouse's odd magic. Later, when you're drying your feet with a towel that smells like bergamot and unfinished sonnets, you find a scrap of parchment tucked between the folds. Another note. No name. Just, don't forget to water your rosemary. It listens better than people. You chuckle. He's at it again. Courting by absurdity. Wooing by plant-based metaphor. And you? You're falling for it. Or floating, rather. On your way out, you pass the row of little cubbies where bathers stash their things. One is clearly his. Not because it's labeled, but because it's chaotic in a distinctively poetic way. A feather. A sliver of worn soap. A coin with a hole in the middle. A folded glove. You don't touch anything. But you linger. He's not here tonight. But he will be again. You know it. These kinds of rituals, however softly absurd, create gravity. Rituals like bottling bathwater, whispering to petals, writing spells into wet tile grout. It's silly, maybe, but it's also deeply human. Romantic in a way that has nothing to do with grand gestures and everything to do with small, repeated acts of noticing. You stop one last time by the basin. Tonight's bath was quieter, more reflective. No declarations. No spinning blossoms. Just the sound of your own breathing, and the comforting knowledge that someone else knows your favorite blend of oils. You slip the jar into your satchel, nestled between your book of riddles and a small sachet of rosemary. You walk home slowly, past shuttered windows and the distant echo of a lute being very poorly played. And somewhere, beneath the moon, maybe, bring time next time. I'm feeling brave. You wake late, limbs steeped in softness, and the scent of last night still ghosting around your wrists. You stretch. Slowly. Like you've earned it. The bathwater jar now sits quietly on the windowsill, its contents faintly glowing in the morning light, as if the memory you bottled has decided to age like wine or wit. You give it a little swirl. Still clear. Still sweet. Still strange. You reach for your writing tools. Today feels like a time sort of day. You scribble on a sliver of pressed parchment, one of those odd, smooth pieces that seem made specifically for writing things you don't want to say out loud. Bring time next time. I'm feeling brave. You pause. Consider adding a sketch. Settle for a small sprig doodled in the corner, the leaves comically oversized. No name. No flourish. Just that. When you return to the bathhouse, the tiles are warm beneath your feet, and the air smells like someone spilled an entire garden in the atrium. Not that you're complaining. The bathkeeper's humming again. You tuck the note where you know he'll find it, his cubby, of course. Still a mess. Still unmistakably him. And then you wait. Tonight's bath is a ritual of layering. First the eucalyptus. Then the crushed violet petals. Then a scandalous splash of orange blossom, because citrus, frankly, doesn't get enough credit in historical flirtation. And you sit. Let it all soak. Let yourself soften into the stone basin and the half-moon curve of your thoughts. You think about how love, real love, or at least its precursor, often hides in the things people collect. Tiny, personal ephemera. Trinkets with no resale value. Bathwater in jars. Folded gloves. Historians still argue whether these exchanges were symbolic tokens or private jokes stretched over years. You're beginning to think they were both. You nearly doze off when you hear it, the softest of coughs. Intentional. Friendly. Followed by footsteps that you recognize by the rhythm alone. He's here. You don't turn. You don't need to. Instead, you let him settle into the basin beside yours, separated by a single swath of mist and about a foot of very warm water. You hear the splush of an added oil. Time, you're guessing. The scent rises like steam off a page. You smile, but say nothing. Let the time do the talking. He speaks first. Not brave, he says. Just aromatic. You don't respond. Not out loud. But you reach behind you, blindly, and splash a single ripple into his basin. Tag, perhaps? The bathkeeper watches all this from afar, eyes twinkling beneath her headscarf, stirring her own concoction with a spoon far too large for the pot. You suspect she knows everything, and records none of it. That's part of the charm. After a while, he speaks again. Did you know time was once believed to ward off melancholy? You hum. A yes. A maybe. An invitation for more. Roman soldiers bathed in it, he continues. They thought it gave them courage. Nobles thought it encouraged dreaming. And of course, poets used it because it smells like subtle ambition. You tilt your head lazily. And which are you? He shrugs. A poet. Possibly dreaming. Ambitious enough to sit next to you. You stifle a laugh, but the steam makes it sound like a sigh. Tonight's conversation is quieter than the last, but heavier in a delicious way. Like cake with too much almond, or honeyed wine that sticks to the cup. You ask if he's ever kept bathwater before. He says once. It grew mold. You grimace. Romantic. He grins. He tucks it into his glove like it's been waiting there. Later, he leaves first. Always does. Leaves behind a ribbon this time, tied loosely around the handle of your water scoop. It's time green. You wear it on your wrist as you walk home. The city feels smaller tonight. Cozier. The lamplight gentler. You think about how ridiculous this all is. You think about how, in 100 years, no one will believe that people used to flirt with herbs and bathe like this. Or maybe they will. Maybe someone will find your notes, pressed between the pages of a recipe book for rose pudding, and wonder who taught you to steep desire in rosemary and thyme. They'll never guess correctly. But that's okay. Because you know. And for now, that's enough. The next day, you skip the bath entirely. Scandalous, perhaps. But necessary. Too much time and you'll start composing sonnets to laundry. Plus, there's something thrilling about absence, what your bathkeeper might call a strategic evaporation. Instead, you wander. You stroll past the spice merchant's stall, inhaling a breeze thick with crushed anise and sun-warmed saffron. You finger a sprig of tarragon, then keep walking. You're not here to shop. You're here to linger in the places he might have touched. The stone ledge by the fountain. The bakery corner where he once flicked flour from his cuffs. The crooked postbox that inexplicably smells like cedar and old perfume. It's not about following him. Not exactly. It's about letting the day feel kissed by potential. In the next square over, a woman selling wax candles lifts a brow at you. Still bathing with that time boy? She asks, the way only elderly women can get away with. You blink. That obvious? She snorts. Honey, you've got sprigs in your hair. Touché. She hands you a small candle, deep rose red, shaped like a clamshell. Leave it at the foot of his tub. He'll know what it means. What does it mean? You ask. She grins, all teeth and mischief. Depends on how he lights it. So now you're a messenger in scented wax. Bathhouse politics, it seems, are more layered than the royal court. That evening, the steam greets you like an old friend. The tiles are warm, and the soft sound of someone humming a tune floats through the air, no one you recognize, but pleasant nonetheless. You place the clamshell candle exactly where instructed, then slide into your own basin. The water tonight is different. Less herbal, more floral. Roses, mostly. But not just petals, roots too. And something faintly coppery. Like ambition. It wraps around you, seeps into your pores, makes you feel as though you're steeping in someone's unfinished poem. You sink deeper. Let your hair float like kelp. Let your mind wander. It doesn't take long. He enters like he always does, soft-footed, casually late, with a towel folded too precisely for someone who insists he's not particular. You hear his breath catch when he sees the candle. He picks it up carefully, almost reverently. There's a moment, one heartbeat, maybe two, where he just studies it. Then he dips the base in his bathwater, setting it afloat. You half smile. Clever man. Lighting it would have been bold. Floating it says, I see you. I'm listening. I'm here. It's a very Versailles kind of gesture. He slips into his own basin, steam curtaining his expression. Did you know, he says at last, that in Florence, during the late 1400s, they believed rosemary-infused bathwater could make someone fall in love with the next person they touched? You raise your brows. And? He shrugs. I considered using rosemary. A small splash follows. Then silence. The kind of silence that says everything is unfolding exactly on schedule. Historians still argue whether these rituals ever worked, he muses, voice low and mellow. The love charms, the floating petals, the socked-away poems. But I think they miss the point. You tilt your head. Which is? He smiles. You can feel it in the air. They gave people permission to try. You pause. Let the thought settle. Then nod. Quietly. Tonight the bathhouse seems quieter than usual. The only sound is water breathing, and that soft whisper of wax as it warms and wilts into liquid. The clamshell candle tips slightly, then rights itself. You wonder if it's enchanted. Probably not. But that's never stopped anyone from pretending. He clears his throat. I brought something. You glance sideways. He lifts a folded handkerchief. Inside, a sliver of dried orange peel, a lavender bloom, and a lock of hair, not yours, you note, and not his. It's gray. From someone older. Reverently kept. My mother's bath spell, he says, voice softer now. She said it helped her sleep. Or dream. Or both. You nod. May I? He hands it to you like a relic. You dip the whole bundle into your basin. It floats briefly, spins, then sinks just beneath the surface like it's shy. For a few minutes neither of you speaks. There's a comfort in the silence. In the shared waterline of memory. In the idea that a little bit of someone else's story can make your own richer. Did you love her? You ask. He blinks. My mother? You chuckle. No. The girl you kept the pencil stub for. A beat. Then, she was clever. Quick. Liked to steal other people's apples and claim they fell. And you? I liked that she didn't need me to write poems for her. She had her own. You mull that over. Then offer, I'm not much of a poet either. He leans back, sighs deeply. Good. I've met too many people in love with the idea of being written about. You nod, letting that compliment linger in the steam like perfume. Tonight you both stay longer. The candles burn low. The bathkeeper doesn't nudge you. Probably because she's already asleep herself, curled in her own chair, a cat pressed like a question mark against her shin. You rise first. Leave behind a clamshell of your own, this time carved from soap, wrapped in ribbon. A thank you? An invitation? A joke? Possibly all three. He doesn't open it. Just pockets it with care. And walks away with dripping steps that echo softly across the stone. You stand, towel wrapped like armor, watching the candle's last flicker disappear down the drain. Maybe tomorrow will bring rosemary. Maybe not. But you'll be here. So will he. The bathhouse is unusually cold today. You notice it right away. The stones beneath your feet lack their usual warmth, and the steam hovers more stubbornly than usual, as if reluctant to rise. Even the flickering torch sconces along the walls seem to shiver. And then you see her. She's new. Or old. It's hard to tell. Her hands are red from lye soap. Her apron bears traces of every flower ever boiled. She hums, not a tune exactly, but a repetition, something halfway between a lullaby and a summoning. She doesn't smile. But she does nod when you ask for your usual basin. You settle in, no. Not letters. Not exactly. Symbols. swirls. A strange alphabet written in the condensation. The kind of thing children might draw with fingers sticky from honeycakes. Or, perhaps more precisely, what someone might draw while murmuring names under their breath. You glance toward the woman. She hums louder. Just as you start to wonder whether this bath has been enchanted, or cursed, you hear a splash from the far basin. You know that sound. It's him. He looks tired. And not in the charming, candlelit way he usually does. His posture slumps a little more. His towel is frayed. And there's a new mark on his wrist, red, raw, shaped suspiciously like a bite. You raise your eyebrows. He shrugs. Don't ask. Love spell gone wrong. You chuckle. Yours? Someone else's. Apparently, wormwood doesn't pair well with desperation. He settles into his tub, splashing slightly more dramatically than necessary. It draws the new attendant's attention, but she only hums again and continues polishing the faucet handles. You lean back. Do you think, he says softly, that curses can be beautiful? You tilt your head. That depends. On intent, maybe. He traces a shape in the water. I met a woman once who swore that every love she'd ever had began with a hex. Accidental? Mostly. She called them encouragements. You snort. She said if a man could survive her charm, he deserved her affection. And if he couldn't, well, she preferred a quiet exit. Sounds efficient. Sounds terrifying. You glance back toward the shapes on the wall. They're fading now, erased by shifting steam. But for a moment, one of them seems to linger, a looping spiral that feels oddly familiar. He notices your stare. Do you know what that is? He asks. You shake your head. It's called the lover's curl, he explains. Used in bathhouses across Old Gaul. Supposed to invite closeness if drawn clockwise. Distance if reversed. You trace it with your finger beneath the waterline. Clockwise. He smiles. Well then. The air softens. Or perhaps it's just your mood. Historians still argue whether such symbols had power, he murmurs, watching you. But I think some things work simply because we want them to. You nod. Like bathwater letters. Or flower spells. Or soap shaped like clamshells. He grins at that. Still have it. You look down into your water and see the faintest sheen of oil. Rose, maybe. Or memory. You watch it swirl into nothing. And then he reaches under his towel and pulls out something odd. A bar of soap, carved roughly into the shape of a heart, but asymmetrical, like it melted before it finished. There's writing etched into the side, so faint you almost miss it. I found it behind the cistern, he says. You squint. What does it say? He turns it in his hand. Could be a name. Could be a wish. Could be someone trying to hide both in plain sight. You take it, weigh it in your palm. It's light. Crumbly at the edges. But it still smells of marjoram and mint, an old pairing for clarity and comfort. It's oddly soothing, you admit. That's the trick. Most curses are. You flick water at him. Is this your way of warning me? He smirks. If it is, you're already enchanted. You both laugh, softly, sleepily, as though the bathwater itself approves. Then he leans back and closes his eyes. You mimic him. The silence stretches long this time. Outside, somewhere beyond the windows, you ever wonder, he says suddenly, who first thought to write spells in bathwater? You peek when I open. I assume someone with very little parchment, and too many feelings. He chuckles. But seriously, he continues, imagine being the first person to say, I love you, now here's a petal soup to prove it. Romantic. Ridiculous. Both. You open your eyes fully, just in time to see him scoop a handful of bubbles and release them toward the ceiling. They burst mid-air, leaving only the faintest scent of thyme and wax. I think I like this one, he murmurs. This bath. This silence. This not quite conversation. You nod. Me too. Because really, there's something magic here. Not the kind of magic with spells and outcomes and consequences. But the quiet kind. The kind that lives in small gestures. A shared bar of soap, a half-remembered tune, a shape traced in steam and forgotten by morning. And that, perhaps, is the best spell of all. It's a few days later when the scroll arrives. No seal, no ribbon. Just loosely rolled parchment tied with twine that smells faintly of rosemary and sheep. Naturally, you unroll it while still drying your hair, a piece of linen half slipping off your shoulder, damp from yet another bath that may or may not have included herbs with suggestive reputations. The handwriting is inconsistent. Some parts are sharp, others loopy and romantic, clearly written in haste or perhaps from memory. But the message is unmistakable. If your dreams have become warmer, it wasn't just the water. You left a curl behind. You blink. Then look to your bedside table where your wooden comb sits, unbothered and missing no teeth. Ah, not that kind of curl. You laugh softly to yourself and roll the scroll back up, slipping it into the drawer beneath a sachet of dried lilac petals and a lump of soap that smells like sun-warmed meadows. Out the window, the city hums with its usual blend of morning clatter and goat noises. But your thoughts remain in the bathhouse, where steam fogs the mirrors, and words melt before they can be reread. Today, though, you're not heading there alone. You've agreed to meet him at the herb vendor's stall, a place that claims to sell both kitchen spices and heart remedies, though which aisle is which remains a matter of deeply amused debate. When you arrive, he's already there, turning over a bundle of dried lavender with all the seriousness of a court physician. "You're late," he says without looking up. "You're pretending this lavender has secrets," you reply. "It might. Everything does." You roll your eyes, but smile. He hands you the bundle. "Smell this." You do. Lavender, sure. But also, underneath it, a whiff of something more playful. Like nutmeg? Or cinnamon bark? Are you mixing spells again? You ask. Maybe. I was thinking something simple this time. Something for mild affection. Only mild? Well, I'd hate to overwhelm you. You're fragile. You elbow him. He takes it like a compliment. As the two of you wander between stalls, vendors call out various offers. Love poplets carved from almond wood, sachets to ward off unwanted suitors, powdered toadstools for boldness, internally or externally, your choice. One woman whispers something about a whispering powder to sprinkle into one's bath to hear the name of your true love whispered in the steam. You both agree that's too creepy, even for you. Eventually, you settle on a small tin of dried petals labeled, somewhat ambiguously, petal blend for romantic resilience. When asked what that means, the seller just winks and offers a discount. Back at the bathhouse, you discover someone has left a message in the condensation again. This one's not a curl but a full sentence. Ask before stirring the cauldron. You look at each other. He shrugs. The bathwater is warm, even though the coals haven't been refreshed. You suspect someone is testing warming charms again. The humming woman is back, this time stringing tiny sachets across the wooden rack like festive garlands. You catch a glimpse of one embroidered with hearts, another with little crescent moons. He drops your herbal tin into the water with ceremony. The petals swirl, releasing a sweet scent that makes you feel unexpectedly hopeful. Not the bold sort of hope that announces itself with trumpets. The quiet kind. The kind that waits. You slide into the water and let it hold you. He sits across from you, the same familiar smirk on his lips, but his eyes look softer today. As if the steam has softened more than just the air. Do you believe, you ask lazily, that love spells actually work? He considers. I think people work. Spells are just the excuse. You swirl a few petals between your fingers. So when knights wrote charms in bathwater, they were just romanticizing soap? Or writing feelings they didn't dare say aloud, he offers. Water forgets things, but not before they've been felt. You like that. You look at him. You've got something on your cheek, you say. He wipes the wrong side. No, other side, you smirk. There. A petal. He flicks it into the water, exaggeratedly offended. It probably cursed me. You giggle. You should be so lucky. The humming returns, this time from a different attendant. The air grows thicker with heat, heavy with the mingling of herbs and something far more human. expectation, perhaps. Not the sharp kind. The low, curling kind. Like bathwater steam forming phrases only the heart can read. You both lapse into silence. Then, out of nowhere, he murmurs, "You know the story of the knight who enchanted his own armor to heat up when someone nearby was in love with him?" You raise a brow. That's very inefficient. Probably. But romantic. Did it work? No one knows. He fell for his squire instead, and they ended up just using the armor as a kettle. You laugh. A love spell that ends in T. Appropriate. Historians still argue whether that tale even counts as a love spell or just a prank gone weird. You let your hand drift across the surface of the water, watching ripples disturb the floating petals. The movement sends a few toward him, and he doesn't push them away. Instead, he says, if you had to write a bathwater spell right now, what would it say? You think. Then slowly lift your hand, trace a few letters where he can see them just before the steam erases them. He reads, smiles faintly. I'd respond, he says, but my handwriting is terrible. And with that, he draws the same message into the water with his fingertip, the motion a mirror of your own, gentle and deliberate. It vanishes within seconds. But you've both read it. And for now, that's enough. The next morning, the spell has disappeared, but its effects, frustratingly, have not. You wake up warm. Not the sweaty kind of warm. The cozy, honey-lace sort, where your limbs refuse to move and your pillow smells faintly of dried thyme and something else you can't quite name, something that definitely wasn't there the night before. You stretch. Something crunches. Not in a terrifying, rodent-in-your-bed way. Just a tiny, herb-like crunch. Ah, one of the petals from the bath has somehow found its way into your blanket. Or perhaps more likely, someone tucked it there while you weren't looking. You clutch it between your fingers, a tiny pink slip of dried memory, and roll out of bed with the kind of giddy dread usually reserved for middle school crushes or imminent tax audits. Outside, the town is unusually quiet. It's market day, but the street is missing its usual swirl of shouting vendors and braying animals. You squint. A chalk sign posted on the corner reads in hastily scrawled script. Closed for festival preparation. Romance-themed nonsense incoming. You've been warned. Oh dear. You'd forgotten today was Festival of the Rose. A local tradition that sits somewhere between a poetic flirtation contest and an excuse to throw flower petals at strangers. It's charming. It's ridiculous. And it usually involves someone trying to play a lute badly while reciting love rhymes in Latin. You sigh. And grin. Because of course, this year you have company. By the time you reach the bathhouse, the entire courtyard has transformed. Garlands of dried herbs drape from the rafters. Buckets of roses line the steps, and someone's released doves, who are now regretting their choices and pooping on statues. You nearly slip on a discarded orange blossom. A child nearby yells, 10 points for flair, as if this were all part of a grand performance. And then he's there. Same crooked smile, same lopsided sash, now decorated with what looks like a stolen festival pin, official spell tester in gold script. It's clearly a joke. Or maybe it isn't? Nice sash, you say? I earned it. Oh? There was an incident involving love charms and goat milk. The details are classified. You roll your eyes. I'm sure they are. Together you enter the bathhouse. But today, the attendants have gone overboard. The water isn't just warm, it's borderline decadent. Floating candles bob between rose petals and crushed bits of rosemary. One tub is labeled for those who've recently been rejected and another, more popular one, says simply, hopeful idiots. You both choose the unlabeled tub, obviously. Safer. Sinking in, the water seems to hug you more than usual. Or maybe it's just your nerves finally unwinding after all that town square rose throwing. You close your eyes, letting the herbal steam gather in your lungs like fog curling over a quiet hilltop. So, he says, half submerged beside you, do you believe in festival magic? You consider. It's possible, you murmur. Especially the part where awkward glances turn into long conversations about basil. He nods. And declarations written on apple slices? Oh, that happened to you too? You both laugh. Then fall into a gentle silence, the kind that feels full, not empty. The kind that's not waiting for anyone to speak. Eventually, your fingers drift toward the edge of the tub where a new set of small jars has been placed. Their labels are handwritten in a spidery scrawl. Lust, lightly stirred. Steadfastness, with a hint of clover. Mutual confusion, best served warm. You pick up the third one. I feel seen, you say? He chuckles. Careful. That one's rumored to turn bathwater into oatmeal if handled poorly. I'd say we're already deep in porridge territory. Speak for yourself. I'm swimming in poetry. Porridge is poetry, you say, completely seriously. He looks at you like you've just invented a whole new genre of cuisine-based emotional philosophy. It's a look you could get used to. A little while later, the bathhouse begins to fill. Festival-goers drift in with flower crowns askew and cheeks pink from either wine or infatuation. You spot someone scribbling a spell on a walnut shell. Another person is carving initials into a bar of soap, clearly an attempt at magical inscription, though it might also just be a hygiene reminder. An elderly woman floats past in a luxurious wrap and whispers, "Remember to dry behind your ears and hex with intention, dear." Noted. As the light from the ceiling slants golden, one of the bathhouse attendants hands you a note. Folded, with a seal you recognize, his. Or rather, a clumsy version of his initials carved into beeswax. You glance at him. He shrugs. You open it. There are no words. Just a drawing. A bath. 2 figures. And a single rose floating between them. You look up, you shake your head. You are absurd. Correct, he says. But effective. Historians still argue whether absurd but effective is the true hallmark of courtship. He leans in. I'd believe that more than love potions. And so, you let the moment stretch. Warm water. Floating roses. Laughter soft as lutes plucked in the next room. You could say something meaningful. You could quote a spell. You could try to explain how the warmth of a bath shared with someone who doesn't need to speak to be heard is its own kind of enchantment. But instead, you simply pluck a rose petal from the surface and press it gently to his palm. The petal sticks. He grins. Magic confirmed. The petal dries on his palm by the time the lute players begin their set. It's the kind of music that meanders without needing a destination. Slow, lazy notes drifting through the steam like honey through warm milk. You close your eyes as the sounds curl into the corners of the bathhouse, settling beside the scent of lemon balm and quiet anticipation. There are no formal announcements for what comes next. No grand declaration. Just a subtle shift in the way the candlelight flickers, a ripple in the rhythm of things. You notice people rising from their baths, moving slowly, draped in damp linens and half-formed intentions. Some are gathering near the tiled walls. Others cluster around the basins where crushed petals float in shallow water. He nudges you gently with one knee. It's beginning, he says. You blink. What is? He gestures toward the furthest wall, where a row of warm tiles gleams like parchment under soft flame. The scribes, he murmurs. Festival tradition. You remember now. The wall of whispers. Each year during the Festival of the Rose, lovers, potential or otherwise, leave messages not with quills, but with their fingers, tracing words into damp tile and leaving them there to evaporate like dreams. Some are confessions. Some are dares. Some are, predictably, poorly spelled poems about ankle dimples. You rise and wrap yourself in a towel that smells faintly of thyme and pine smoke. Together, you drift toward the wall, where a few brave souls have already begun to etch their emotions into the glistening surface. One man, flushed from too much chamomile wine, scrawls, to the girl with the crooked tooth, "You ruined me." Next to it, a dainty set of initials reads, "Only if you deserved it." You chuckle, and your bath companion leans in to whisper, "That might be the most romantic thing I've read all week." You find a free space near a candle sconce, your breath fogging the glazed ceramic. And then, very carefully, you raise one finger and begin to write. Nothing fancy. Nothing scripted. Just the simple curve of This was warmer than I expected. He leans close to read it, and for a moment you both hover there. Two silhouettes breathing in tandem, watching steam and words dance together. That could mean so many things, he says quietly. Exactly, you reply. Let it. A voice nearby yelps in outrage. A woman stares at her tile, horrified. Someone wrote a spell in my spot. It was mine since last year. Everyone turns. Her towel is slightly askew. The spell in question reads, Toad's breath and honey wine, bring me the one who reads this. Her gaze lands on a sheepish young man who slowly raises his hand. I read it. Twice. There's a pause. Then the entire bathhouse bursts into applause. You laugh. He laughs. Even the tub designated for failed courtship sloshes with glee. The air grows heavier, but not in a bad way. It's the weight of enchantment thickening, of whispers and wishes saturating the tiles and the water and the places in between. Someone opens a jar labeled Lingering Looks. The wall begins to glisten with overlapping messages, little blurbs of longing, fragments of foolish bravery. Your shoulder freckles haunt me. If you find my ring, marry me. To the person with the violet soap, I forgive you. You notice he hasn't written anything yet. Just watched. So you poke his arm. Aren't you going to leave a message? He pretends to think. I was considering one of the classics. Maybe, the steam makes your eyebrows noble. Tempting. Or shall we discuss herbal infusions over a shared foot soak? Subtle. He sighs dramatically. Fine. With exaggerated care, he leans in and slowly traces. I didn't believe in spells until this tub. It's not brilliant. It's not even particularly poetic. But it makes something catch in your chest. Because it's exactly true. Behind you, someone begins humming a tune, soft, aimless, like a lullaby sung by someone who half remembers it from childhood. You recognize it. It's a bath for the brave, a festival ballad with lyrics that are entirely inappropriate for public performance, but oddly comforting when hummed wordlessly. You close your eyes again, the heat of the tile wall seeping into your skin. Every nerve is sleepy. Every muscle lax. And yet your heart thumps just enough to remind you, this isn't a dream. Or if it is, it's one you're being allowed to keep for a while. I'm glad you came to the bathhouse, you murmur. He nudges your shoulder with his. I almost didn't. Why not? I thought the steam spells were fake. They might be. I'm not complaining. You lean your head against the warm tile, eyes half-lidded. Somewhere nearby, someone drops a glass. No one reacts. Another voice mutters, that's the third time tonight. At this rate, the soap will unionize. He chuckles again, low and quiet, and the sound feels like a cozy quilt draped over your evening. I wish the wall kept the messages longer, you say. It does. Just not visibly. Ah. One of those magical metaphor things? Exactly. You let the silence settle. Outside the bathhouse, the sounds of the festival continue. Music, laughter, the occasional yelp from someone who tried to flirt with a florist and got smacked with a rosemary bouquet. You and your companion remain by the wall, not speaking, not needing to. Just two people lingering in the haze of warmth and words, where even silence seems spelled. Eventually, he whispers, do you think we'll remember this? You turn to him and smile. Only if we want to. The candles begin to burn lower, their golden flickers pulling long shadows across the tiled floor. The bathhouse air thickens into the final warmth of evening, like the last exhale of a dreaming creature. You linger beside the wall of whispers with your towel tucked around your shoulders and your skin glazed in herbal steam. It feels like you've lived 3 lifetimes in this bath. Someone has tossed dried rose petals into the nearest tub, where they bob gently in circles. Across the room, a young couple tries and fails to discreetly hold hands beneath the waterline. You pretend not to notice, just as everyone else politely pretends not to notice you and your bath companion leaning ever closer, your heads nearly touching over the invisible ink of wet tile. You know, he says, voice soft, there's a theory that bathwater absorbs memories. You raise an eyebrow. Like a sponge? Exactly. All the longing, all the laughter, all the awkward confessions. The water remembers. Which is why some say, a well-drawn bath in a well-loved place can teach you how to feel again. Is this one of those historians still argue moments? He laughs low and fond. Historians still argue whether bathwater can carry love spells or merely temporary illusions of comfort. You swish your toes in the nearest tub. Because you're not ready for that story? Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it's okay, because the bath knows. And the bath will wait. Just then, an older woman walks by with a staff shaped like a teacup. She bangs it lightly on the floor and calls out, "Final infusions." If you haven't soaked your intentions, do it now or wait until next waxing moon. You give your companion a questioning glance. He shrugs. You heard the lady. Time to soak our intentions. You approach the basin labeled Spiced Wishes, where tiny scrolls float in warm water beside slices of dried plum and, curiously, one very confident daffodil. You're supposed to think about something you want, he whispers, and swirl your hand 3 times. What if I want something extremely specific and also moderately ridiculous? Then you'll fit right in. You crouch beside the basin. The water is silky with oils, dotted with bits of clove and lemon rind. You hover your hand over the surface, then slowly dip your fingers in. Your wish begins as a silly thing. A thought you'd laugh at in daylight. But here, now, in the mist and firelight, it unfurls like a scroll. You want to feel seen. Not just noticed, but gently understood. The way someone might read your favorite sentence out loud without needing it explained. You swirl the water once. Twice. And again. Your companion follows, though you don't ask what his wish is. That would be rude, of course. Besides, you think you already know. When you both rise, the bath keeper with the teacup staff nods approvingly. Very nice swirls, she says. You've got future harmony written all over you. High praise, you murmur. She once told me I had imminent shoelace trouble, your companion adds. You're not sure whether to laugh or feel vaguely cursed. The mood shifts gently toward closure. Some bathers have wrapped themselves in dry linens and begun drifting toward the exit archway, which glows faintly with runes meant to keep you from remembering the outside world too soon. Others curl up beside cooling stones, sighing contentedly like cats after too much sun. You and your companion walk together without speaking, arms brushing. The wall of whispers is behind you now, but its words linger in your mind like the scent of pine resin in the air. As you pass a final steam-filled alcove, you hear someone reciting something, a spell, or maybe a bedtime story. The voice is low and honeyed, telling of a knight who forgot his own name but remembered the sound of someone's laugh, and how that became enough. You stop. He stops. You turn toward him and whisper, "Do you think the bath will remember us?" "I hope it does. Even if we don't come back?" He hesitates. Then says, with unexpected certainty, "Especially then." You nod. And for one tiny moment, you wish the runes on the exit would let you take this entire evening with you. But you understand why they don't. Magic, as the scholars often debated, lives best in memory, not in repetition. You reach the archway. He touches your wrist gently and murmurs, "Good night, bathtub night." You grin. "Good night, charming nuisance." And you step through. The bathhouse fades behind you, not gone, just softened into the folds of your imagination. The world outside is quieter, slower. You're wrapped in a robe that might not be real and a peace that most definitely is. You walk along the cobbled path, past sleepy lanterns and ivy-kissed walls, until you reach your room. The bed is turned down. A single rose petal lies on your pillow. You suspect it's the same one you gave him hours ago. Or maybe he gave it to you. Memories funny like that. You climb into bed, still warm from the steam, your limbs heavy in the best possible way. Outside, the last echoes of festival music drift away like the tale of a dream. And in your mind, a message still glows faintly on a wall of tile. This was warmer than I expected, and better than it had any right to be. The night outside deepens, thick as velvet, wrapping gently around the edges of your thoughts. You lie still now, your body steeped in softness, like a petal sinking to the bottom of a warm spring. Your limbs no longer carry stories. They simply rest, folded and quiet, as if the memories of the bathhouse have lulled them into perfect contentment. You breathe in, slowly, and exhale just a little longer. The world narrows, tenderly, to the sound of your breath and the echo of distant laughter you can almost, but not quite, recall. All the candlelight, the whispers behind steam curtains, the curious flirtations and silly love spells, they dissolve like honey into tea, leaving only sweetness. If you reach back far enough in your mind, you can still feel the shimmer of warm water on your skin, the way it hummed like a secret under your fingertips. There's no rush now. Even the memories have curled up to sleep beside you, purring against your ribs like old cats who remember 100 stories but choose not to tell them. Not tonight. Outside your window, the stars settle in their spots, dim and respectful, as if they know you've had enough magic for one evening. Let yourself drift. Let the tile walls fade. Let the petals sink. And when you wake again, if you do, the bathhouse will still be there, just behind your breath, just past your dreams, waiting in the steam for your return.